Hi everyone, welcome back to another macro video. Today I'm going to compare the NiSi 58mm close-up lens with the Raynox DCR-250. The Raynox DCR-250 has +8 diopters, whereas the NiSi 58mm only comes with +5 diopters, so the magnification ratio is considerably lower. In this video I'm only going to focus on the actual image quality. I'm going to try and find some cooperative subjects in the backyard, and then we're going to hop into Lightroom. We're going to compare the images. I'm not going to edit them whatsoever, just look at the raw files and then we can draw some conclusions. So let's get started. Today I'm going to be shooting everything with the Canon ATD APS-C DSLR and the Canon EF 100mm macro lens with image stabilization. For lighting, I'll be using the Canon EX2 RT in manual mode at maximum flash output. A little bit about the exposure settings. For aperture, I'm going to be using f14, which is going to give us plenty of depth of field. Shutter speed is going to vary, but I'm going to start at 1/80th of a second, and we go from there. And I'm going to try and keep the ISO below 320. We're going to start at the base ISO of 100. I've already found our first subject, a very small specimen, about 0.5 centimeter in length. And I'm going to try and take a shot at the maximum magnification, once again with the NiSi 58mm close-up lens. If you struggle to find your subject in the viewfinder, then I suggest you use the magnification ring or focusing ring and then push it back. Once you find the subject, then push it all the way back to 1:1. All right. Unfortunately, the other specimen flew away, so I gotta stick with a static subject. So let's try and take some images of this. I'm going to focus right at the tip of this little shoot. All right, I'm going to change the ISO to 250. Let's see if that is going to give us a little bit more of an optimal exposure. Yep, that's fine. So I focused on the front part of this little shoot, and now I'm going to switch to the DCR-250. I've got the DCR-250 attached now, and we're gonna do the exact same. I'm gonna take a couple more test shots of the same subject, but this time I'm gonna turn the focusing ring all the way towards infinity and see how the working distance and the minimum focusing distance are affected. I really like to have this kind of flexibility, because sometimes for reference shots, or if you wanna include more of the environment of your subject in the frame, then this feature can come really handy. All right, let's do the same with the DCR-250. I'm gonna try and take a picture of this little flower here. Focus right in the center. Yep, that's good. And we're gonna do the exact same with the DCR-250 now. I'm gonna bump up the ISO to 160 because the effective aperture is smaller. Yeah, the focus is right. I'm gonna try and find some more interesting subjects rather than only these static flowers and plants. Once I got all the images, we're gonna hop into Lightroom, gonna do a bit of pixel peeping, and then we can draw some conclusions, and then hopefully at the end you will be able to decide which close-up lens is the better option for you. So see you soon. All right, let's have a look at those shots that I have already showed you very briefly throughout the video. In this first shot, you can see that the image on the left, which was taken with the NiSi 58mm close-up lens, the magnification ratio is slightly smaller. With the DCR-250, if I zoom in, you can see that only a very small section is in focus. The depth of field is much shallower, and I'd say over here is where the focus was. Yep, that's the sharpest part, definitely. And then if I zoom in on the other image, which was taken with the NiSi 58mm close-up lens, you can see that more of these little leaves are in focus, and the sharpness, I'd say, is a little bit better overall. Let's zoom in here as well. But I wouldn't go as far as better. Very, very similar. So even though the Magnification ratio is about 40% higher on the Raynox DCR, 8 versus 5 in terms of diopters. The resolving power of the NiSi 58mm is still pretty decent, but there is a little bit more discernible detail at this level of magnification on the DCR-250. In these next couple of shots, which were taken when I turned the focusing ring all the way towards infinity, the minimum focusing distance and the working distance was considerably longer than when it was at 1:1 magnification or the maximum magnification. If you try to capture a much smaller subject, you can still get much more of the environment in even with the DCR-250, but if the subject is larger than, I'd say, 2 or 3 centimeters, then the NiSi 58mm close-up lens is going to be a much better option, a more versatile option. Plus, if you are working with really skittish insects, then you can use the NiSi 58mm much more efficiently or effectively. So in these next couple of shots, at first glimpse, the flower on the right, which was taken with the NiSi 58mm close-up lens, looks sharper than the one with the DCR-250, but that might be because of the effective aperture. At the higher magnification ratio, the depth of field also decreases, so it results in a softer, kind of softer image. But if I zoom in, let's zoom in a little bit to the center with both, and you can see that the DCR-250 has a little bit more discernible detail where I focused. Alright, our next subject is a social house spider that I encountered in our backyard as well. We've got so many of these in one particular corner where there is a large aggregation. The one in the middle was taken with the NiSi 58mm at the lowest magnification, and then the one on the left was taken with the DCR-250. You might wonder what this third image is on the right. This one was taken when I stacked both the NiSi 58 and the DCR-250 for a maximum magnification of about 3x. The sharpness is still exceptional. Let me just zoom in to the center. So you can see there is still plenty of detail, and the chromatic aberration or diffraction is still pretty well handled. Where was the focus? Yeah, the focus was right here somewhere on the chelicerae, or the ventral part of the chelicerae. It looks really cool. Let me just zoom in on the spinnerets as well. Yeah, the spinnerets look pretty cool as well. There's so much detail. In the middle, this one was the NiSi 58, and this looks really sharp even with just a single frame. The majority of our subject is in focus. And then let's have a look at the DCR-250 as well. You can see that the focus was on the side of the abdomen. You can see quite a bit of detail, all those individual tiny little colorful hairs that are easily discernible. I assume that if I had lowered the aperture to f8 and started stacking, then the sharpness would be absolutely amazing. I think I'm gonna do a little bit of testing just to eliminate, the diffraction as much as possible. We've got another spider here, very tiny spider, which would have been about 3 to 4 millimeter in length, I'd say. The one on the right had a small magnification ratio, as you might have already guessed, was taken with the NiSi 58mm, and the other one is the DCR-250. Let's zoom in a little bit. Here I missed the focus, I didn't focus. Oh no, actually, somewhat in focus. I think the focus was right here on the abdomen. Let's have a look at the other shot. Yeah, here the focus is a bit better on the eyes. And let's zoom in. You can see that the DCR-250 has a little bit more detail in these little protrusions on the abdomen, and a little bit sharper across the frame. So at this magnification, you can see that DCR-250 has resolved more detail in the hairs, but I managed to focus better on the NiSi 58 on the eyes, so there's a little bit more detail in the eyes. Overall, even though the magnification ratio is higher on the DCR-250, the NiSi 58mm still managed to resolve quite a bit of detail. There isn't a clear winner in this particular image, I'd say. Our next subject is a rainbow ant, and these were all different specimens because they were just running around like crazy headless chooks, unfortunately. The image in the middle was taken with the NiSi 58mm, while those two on the side were taken with the DCR-250. I really love the colorful abdomen on this image. You can see the iridescence quite a bit there, and the focus was in the midsection of its exoskeleton. And I potentially should have used a little bit higher shutter speed because you can see a little bit of blur, I'd say. So maybe instead of 1/80th, I could have gone to 120th of a second. Let's have a look at this shot on the NiSi 58. I missed the focus because I tried to focus on the eye, but I think the focus was, the focus was right here on the really colorful iridescent abdomen. And let's have a look at the last shot. Here I actually managed to focus on the eye with the DCR-250. You can see those little individual single photoreceptors called ommatidia. I love how reflective their exoskeleton is. That's why it is essential that you use diffusion layers, otherwise the highlights would be completely blown out and it's really difficult to recover any detail there. All right, let's go to the next subject. Our next subject is a very small fly that I spotted on one of the succulents. This one was highly iridescent once again with beautiful red compound eyes. The image in the middle and on the left side were taken with the NiSi 58mm close-up lens, and the higher magnification shot on the right was with the DCR-250. Let's do a bit of pixel peeping and zoom in. So as you can see that even with a very small subject such as this fly, I would have had to take at least 3 to 4 images to get the entire subject sharp. All right, let's zoom into this one. And you can see that I missed the focus. The focus is not perfect on the eye. Instead, it was on the abdomen. Let's do the same for the DCR-250. And here, if I zoom in, you can see that I missed the focus once again. It was moving around quite a bit, and I think the focus was right on the legs, unfortunately, but it's still okay. Our second last subject is a female bronzehopper that I spotted in the backyard on the wooden fence. The image in the middle was taken with the NiSi 58mm close-up lens. You can see that it's slightly lower magnification. Let's zoom in a little bit and have a look at how much detail we can see on those tiny little hairs that cover the eyes partially, and do the same with the DCR-250. Level of detail on the DCR-250 is so much better, and I really love this shot. I mean, it looks amazing. This is really sharp, and again, remember that I did not add any sharpness, didn't increase textural detail or anything in Lightroom. I only adjusted the exposure. Let's zoom in on this shot as well. This is my favorite, where you get a little bit of eye contact. It is quite detailed. As you can see, you can even spot the fangs under the chelicerae. Part of the pedipalps are sharp as well. And let's zoom in a little bit more. Yes, this is pretty decent, even though I had to up the ISO a little bit for these shots. Our very last subject is my absolute favorite. I had not seen male bronzehoppers in our backyard for quite some time, so I was really happy to grab this series of shots. The image on the right was taken with the NiSi 58mm and the one on the left with the DCR-250. Let's zoom in a little bit and see how detailed this is, and do the same. Yeah, so we are at 66. You can see that the NiSi 58mm close-up lens is still quite detailed, but the DCR-250 comes out on top once again. Let me zoom in a little bit just to see. I mean, it's not bad at all, but you can see more detail in these hairs and a little bit more sharpness right there considerably more detail. Those individual hairs can be discerned. This particular section looks sharper on the NiSi though. Yeah, overall the DCR-250 is better for sure, I'd say. These are my absolute favorite shots, I'd say. Even the NiSi 58mm close-up lens looks quite good. Alright, now that we are zoomed into 100%, once again the DCR-250 has just so much more detail. I potentially should have lowered the exposure on the right with the NiSi 58mm, because you can see that these hairs, these white hairs, are already blown out, so I could have used a higher shutter speed. Let's move it around again. So much detail in these individual hairs around those huge black beady eyes, and the NiSi 58mm is still pretty decent. Quite a bit of detail, but the DCR-250 is the clear winner. Let's summarize some pros and cons for each of these budget close-up lenses. The price is slightly higher for the DCR-250, but there are sales on Amazon quite often, so keep an eye out for those. Both of these lenses cost less than $100, the NiSi 58mm at $79, whereas the Raynox is usually around $90, but sometimes you can get it much cheaper at approximately $70. The build quality of the NiSi 58mm is superb, the brushed aluminium feels great, but the Raynox DCR-250 isn't bad either, even though the partial plastic build and the snap-on mount itself feels a little bit cheap, but it's actually quite durable. I've dropped it a few times unfortunately, once on concrete as well, and luckily I didn't damage it. The NiSi 58mm comes with a nice protective hard case pouch with high quality zippers and snap-on plastic caps, while the DCR-250 only came in a cheap plastic box and similarly built lens caps. The weight of the DCR-250 is considerably smaller, comes in at just 75 grams with the snap-on adapter, while the NiSi 58mm with an adapter ring approximately weighs 120 grams. The image quality is pretty close between these two lenses, but in terms of detail, the DCR-250 comes out on top and the sharpness remains exceptional. The color reproduction is slightly better in my opinion on the NiSi 58mm due to the special apochromatic design and nano coating, but the DCR-250 is pretty good as well. There is negligible chromatic aberration for both, especially when you use them on a high quality macro lens such as the Canon EF 100mm. There is no significant vignetting with either of these setups. In terms of usability, both of these lenses have their own advantages. The NiSi 58mm is more versatile when it comes to subjects of different sizes. When you turn the focusing ring all the way towards infinity, you can include more of the environment than, for example, on the Raynox DCR-250. Also, with very skittish insects, the working distance is considerably longer, which can be very useful, for example, with dragonflies, damselflies. On the other hand, I really love the functionality of the snap-on universal adapter of the DCR-250 that makes it compatible with lenses between 52 and 67mm filter threads. It's so easy to attach and detach the Raynox, and it makes it a very versatile option in the field as well. Just keep in mind that you will need a step-up ring to 67mm when you want to attach the 58mm onto the 100mm lens from Canon. It's quite hard to pick a winner overall, but if you need the most amount of detail, I recommend the DCR-250 for you. But if you want to focus on larger subjects, the NiSi 58mm is going to be a better, more versatile option. Anyway, I should wrap this up now. Hopefully you find this review or comparison useful and you'll be able to make the best decision in terms of which lens is gonna suit your needs the best. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed this video. If you're new to the channel, don't forget to subscribe, and catch you all very soon in the next one.